Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deepsouth Homestead. We're out working with our tomatoes this morning. We're tying them up here, trying to get them where they don't get broke off from these severe windstorms we've been having. And I want to show y'all some of the secrets to growing successful tomatoes. One is you have to always understand that disease on tomatoes starts from the ground and comes up. And that's because when the leaves are close to the ground like this, the rain hits the dirt and splatters it up on the leaves, and it leaves a spore on the leaves that will actually cause disease. So here at Deepsouth, I take my scissors and I go along and I clip these leaves off the bottoms and get them out away from here. Because you have to remember, we're not growing leaves, we're growing tomatoes. You want to get a good airflow under the bottom of these plants. And if you got one like this one, that's like, say, close to the ground, you can clip it off up high and still leave some of the leaf on there. Because it's, like I said, you're growing tomatoes. Like there's going to be tomatoes here and here. You're not growing leaves. Leaves are okay once you get your foliage established up here to help keep the hot sun from blistering your tomatoes. But rule number one with one of the secrets is get the leaves at least 10 to 12 inches from the ground, away from the dirt, because that's where the stuff splatters up on the plant. So that's your first rule. Okay, I'm going to show y'all how I tie tomato plants with the crocheting yarn. And a lot of people worry that this will hurt. I catch one knot and I pull it and I stop before I get to the plant, because the plant will grow in diameter and I don't want it tight around it. I do it twice and I pull it, and that gets a tight knot, and that leaves me 2 loose strings here. I'll pull one of them on each side of the thing here and make sure you're not, damaging the leaves. And then I just tie, once again, 2 knots in behind it, kind of pull them tight. And that takes care of it, and that holds your plant up against the stick. And then I come back, once again, cut, cut, cut. We're getting rid of these leaves away from the ground. Okay, I want y'all to look here. I've let this one fork. We're talking about sucker sprouts. You don't want too many sucker sprouts on a tomato plant. Now, these are interdeterminants. These are not determinants. These will continually grow upward. A determinant is one that turns into just a bush. All the tomatoes get ripe at usually about the same time over a couple of week period, and it's over. This being interdeterminate, it will last all summer long. And there's no suckers down here. See this little one here? We have a small sucker coming out right here. Well, we want to get rid of those. I usually leave one so that my plant forks. That gives me 2 tomato plants coming off of 1 stalk. And then I look up into here, I see another. There's another sucker right here. I will usually get those suckers out and throw them out of there. That way I have 2 plants growing up here now that I can tie up and grow tomatoes off of 1 stalk. I will tie each one of them up to the post. In our hot climate, I like to have this foliage there from the 2 suckers because it helps to shade. And then once again, we got a leaf down here that's too close to the ground. We're going to get rid of it. We're going to get rid of that one. Get them out of the way. We're going to reach over. We're going to tie this one up. Everybody talks about having a baby a tomato plant. Tomato plants are extremely hardy plants. You don't have to be as babyish with them as you think you would. They're pretty tough. Okay, the sucker sprouts, you hear this word used on tomatoes a lot. That's this little plant that comes out between the leaf and the main stem. Now this will grow another little plant with tomatoes on it. When they're little, you can take them out by hand like that. But now once they get up to be larger, if we'll look over, you get over here a little bit. Once we right in here, okay. Once they get up larger, you can see this one right here. It's coming out at the leaf. Now this makes a big long plant. If you go to try to break this out by hand, what you do is end up tearing the plant. So I like to take a pair of scissors. That's my gardening scissors, and I'll clip this. I'll show you how long it is here. Let me get it out there. See how big this was? That's just too much for that plant, especially right in the top like that. Okay, once again, we've got our airflow underneath the tomatoes here. Now down south where the humidity is a problem, that's what you want to make sure you have happening here. Now even though there's some leaves like here, I've cut them off. These are still protecting the tomatoes from the hot sun down here. But you can see when the tomatoes get to be like this, the plant is really sucking up some nitrogen at this point. And what you want to do at that point is come in and you want to rake your leaves back like we do here. You rake the leaves back, and I put a tablespoon of Epsom salt and a tablespoon of your favorite choice of nitrogen, whether it be chemical or, because some people use chemical nitrogen, or if you use an organic form of nitrogen, a tablespoon around the bottom of the plant. Water it in real good, and then rake your mulch back up around it so that the sun doesn't draw it out, because tomatoes need that nitrogen about once every 2 weeks during the growing season while they're like this, and they need water at least an inch a week. So make sure you do that. And a lot of people will take these little tuna cans that you get, or chicken cans that are an inch thick and about that big around, and they'll bury them in the ground right here, and they'll take their sprinkler system and sit here, and you don't want to ever wet the leaves. You want to wet it right at the ground here, and when you sprayed enough water around that plant that can is full of water, that's 1 inch of water. And you're going to want that at least every week to have a successful tomato crop. Now looking up, I'm going to go through this plant here. Now see right in here is another sucker. I'm going to reach right in there and get that out. Another one down in here. We want all of our growth to go to tomatoes. We're growing tomatoes. We're not growing leaves. That's where a lot of people make their mistake, is all they think about is growing the beautiful plant. Like you see this sucker right here? It's got blooms on it and everything here. Now you could take this and stick it in some wet dirt and you'd grow another plant real quick, but I don't need it this year, so I'm just going to, one reason I come in here, I take these and I cut that out of the way, because to me that's just sapping this plant down, and I don't really need that on this plant. Okay, now that my plant has reached its height of the cage, what I usually will do is come up here and find the very tip of the plant right here, and I snip it out. Now what this will do, and here's another one over here, what this will do, this stops the upward growth of this plant. Now because I have it as high as I want it, I don't mind if a couple of suckers come out in here now to start filling up my cage. Like I have one right here. This one will come up and go on this side of the cage, and I'll allow another one or two to come up in here. Like here's one right here. I'm allowing this one to come up. And when these get to the top of the cage, I will snip them off also, because I don't want the plant just falling out all over the top up here. I want to start getting my growth in around the bottom now that I have the height. And you can see in here we've already got some really nice tomatoes. I mean, they're, you know, my hand, you can see how big they are there against my hand. Probably won't be too long we'll start having some of them turn ripe. But that's just another one of the secrets that we use here at Deep South about how we train our tomatoes. Because tomatoes are a lot like children. If you don't give them boundaries, they tend to go everywhere, and a kid's the same way. A small kid, if you don't put boundaries on that child, it just gets out of hand. And a tomato plant is exactly the same way. If you don't keep it within its boundaries, it starts growing sprouts and it just gets everywhere. And that's why I always liken my tomato plants are like children. So you kind of got to reel them in a little bit to kind of let them know where their boundaries are. And when you do that, they flourish. You know, and so that's another one of our secrets here at Deep South that we use. We treat our tomato plants just like we would treat children. We don't get abusive with them, but at the same time we prune them back and we keep them within their boundaries, because that way they do the best. Another thing we do in our tomato garden is, if you look down in here, you see these? we put the pepper plants in between our tomato plants because peppers and tomatoes are both nightshades. And we do come along and grow them in there between them like that. That kind of helps. Peppers love to hold hands, and if the peppers grow up and grow into the tomato plants, we've learned that it really doesn't hurt them, and it's an additional way. Like here's another one right here. These are Marconis. They seem to do extremely well mixed in with the tomato plants. Let me talk about that. Okay, you'll notice here too, we have two strings tied up high like this. We like our tomatoes to get up about 6 feet tall. And what this is, we have our sticks are only so tall. Some of them are 4 foot, some of them are 5 foot. But we put two strings up here, and what we do with this is what we call our basket weave system. We get our tomato stalks on one side of this string, and then when it reaches the top, we flip it over to the other side of that string. And that kind of helps hold them where the wind won't whip them around too bad. So that's another tip we use here on these intradeterminate tomatoes that we grow. Is about 6 feet tall, about as tall as we want them, and we'll use a basket weave system at the very top of them. We only had so many of these concrete reinforcement wire cages. I think we had 30 something of them, and we usually plant like 75 to 100 tomatoes in this patch right here. So what we do is we space our cages out and our tall sticks, and that way we can run our strings from cage to cage and stick to stick, so that these shorter sticks, when the tomato plants gets up, we can weave these tomatoes into them, and our whole crop ends up being the same height through here.